What's up, guys? Welcome back. Today we are going to be reinstalling the transmission back in the Z06. I got it back from my friend, all rebuilt, and my engine actually should be done fairly soon as well. They're just painting the block and doing the reassembly. So today I'm going to show you guys how to put the entire rear end back in, including the torque tube, diff, rear cradle. Hopefully I can do this by myself. It should be a little interesting trying to finagle this, but if I do it the reverse way that I took it out, it should be all right. Just a rundown what I did with the transmission, just in case you guys are new. I had a really bad second gear grind. I found out the fork pads were worn out, and the little plastic fork pads in those things, as they wear, the shift forks can't engage fully with the synchro teeth on the actual gear itself, and you'll get some grinding, and it'll just get worse and worse because the travel of that slider is out of spec because the fork can't move it. So there's also an issue with the fifth gear, so I had to replace that because the fork pads were destroyed between fourth and fifth. But we got all new synchros, reverse synchro, all new seals, these front seals in the rear and all around. Let's see, what else do we do? Upgraded synchros actually. So I got all these parts from the gearbox.com. Luckily they still have T56 parts in stock because of crazy supply chain issues. Because this only had like 30,000 miles on it, there wasn't too much actual wear besides the teeth on some of those gears. So we got that addressed, and now it's time to throw it back in the car. Right now, I'm actually gonna run to the store because I don't really trust this big O-ring between the transmission and diff. I'd like to put a little bit of RTV sealant around the outside of that just in case this O-ring fails at some point. You got the second layer of RTV to hold the diff fluid in, which is kind of weird because if you look at the diff itself, it's got a hole in it, in the back of it, and it allows diff fluid to come out the front, which is kind of a stupid design. But I just don't want any leaks between the transmission and rear diff, so I'm gonna throw that on. But yeah, gotta reconnect those brake lines, and then just try and jack everything up at once, and the torque tube and the rear diff at the same time, and balance it. But it should go up fairly easily. I just have to make sure that these little alignment pins go up where they're supposed to, and that these 4 mounting points for the cradle go up in their respective spots. I need to also make sure that there's a transmission wiring harness back there with a whole bunch of sensors that go in there. There's like a reverse sensor, there's the skip shift, there's a temp sensor, and I think that's pretty much it. But you have to just make sure those are all plugged in, because you can't really get to those once the transmission is back up there. I started to lose motivation working on that car because there's just so much to do. The entire drivetrain is out right now, but I watched a video last night, and it was, I think his name is Ferris. He has a C6 Z06 twin turbo, like all black. He was featured on Hoonigan when they do that drag racing series, but he had the fastest lap time in Time Attack at Road Americas in Texas, and it just inspired me because, you know, he was talking about how he had to go through like 5 or 6 different versions of the car, and it just keeps getting better and better and faster. And I just have to keep reminding myself that C5s and C6s are such great platforms for racing in general. It'd be kind of stupid to abandon the chassis itself. So yeah, we're gonna continue this adventure and see where it leads. Guys, when you're working on this kind of stuff, just make sure you're torquing stuff down to the factory torque spec. It took me literally 5 extra minutes to do this, and you don't run the risk of cracking, you know, aluminum cases and all that stuff. So these were 37 foot-pounds from the factory, torqued all that down, good to go, and then got a nice little RTV bead around there, plus the O-ring that should hopefully hold pretty well. Next step is I need to put the shifter rod back on. I need to double check to see which orientation this went, because there's like a little bend in here. Can't remember exactly, so I need to refer back to my old video and check, see how this went. All right, so it's actually pretty simple to figure out the orientation of this. When you take the bolt out of where it goes in through the shifter inside the car, I remember the bolt goes down and screws in. So if you look at this, there's no threads on one side, and then there's threads on the other side. So yeah, that would go the other way. And you know what I just noticed is this pin isn't lined up in here, so I'm gonna have to like pull this out a little bit. But yeah, it would go like that with this kind of angled piece facing down, and then there's like a little kind of notch right here, and that also faces down. So I'm gonna put this back in. There's a roll pin that goes in there. Don't lose it, because I could not find the actual GM part number. I wanted to order a new one, and yeah, wasn't able to find anything. So they say to start these, you kind of use vice grips to compress this roll pin a little bit so you can slide it up in there. So let's see if that works. As long as you get it started, should start to slide in there. Cool. All right, so that looks like it's in. And then start to hammer that through. Just make sure it catches on that hole. There you go. Shifter shaft is back in. Nice. Transmission feels really good. I think I'm going to lubricate this joint right here. I don't like that there's a little bit of play in it. A lot of people will actually cut this joint out and weld in a new joint, make it kind of firm it up a little bit. I've seen also people put little tiny shims in there to get rid of the play, but yeah, I don't know. Next order of business is going to be getting the torque tube back on. There are 2 alignment dowels, and then the shifter rod comes through the bell housing, and that should be pretty much it. And then just make sure you have some of your bolts ready, so when it's on there you can start cranking that thing down. And then just put a little bit of lube on the shaft there, and then should hopefully slide on a little bit easier. I did actually take this torque tube apart. I should have probably done a video on it. There's a big snap ring right here, giant one, and they're a little bit difficult to get out. So what I ended up doing was taking a cheap set of needle nose pliers, and these ones were already worn out, but I put a little groove on each end to grab the ends of the clip, and then you can get it out pretty easily and not have it snap off and fly in your face and poke your eye out. So yeah, worked out pretty well. Because this car had such low miles, all the bearings were good. I just wanted to mainly inspect the guibos, or those little rubber flex joints, to make sure they weren't dry rotted or cracked or anything. So that all looked good, so we're going to mate these 2 back up now. we got this spaceship all reassembled again. I'm gonna take a little lunch break, but after that, gonna slide this whole assembly back under the car, and then have a jack at one end, one at the other, lift it up fairly evenly, and then get this Johnny back up on those 4 posts there, and then we should be good to go. Probably just going to throw the shifter back in, and then I'm gonna have the mufflers probably hang over the transaxle again like I did when I was lowering it. It's a little bit of a pain in the ass to get the mufflers in the right position to go up and over when this is back in place, so the less work the better. Alright, so now I got this somewhat in position so I can hook up all the electrical connections and then the brake lines on the top. Here's the transmission wiring harness. Alright, so I ended up plugging this stuff in off camera because I had to like crawl under there and attach everything because I didn't have enough length to like do it when it was further away. But I got these union fittings, brake lines tied in, and then there are 2 plugs that go to the ABS sensors on each side. But I'm gonna try to raise this thing up now from the front and the back, and then see if we can get this cradle line back up to these pins. So there's these alignment dowels. I'm gonna try to get it in there best I can and then go from there. And then there is also a ground that's supposed to go right up there, so I'm just gonna put this here so I don't forget. Okay, so one other thing to note here, there is a wiring conduit that hooks into the torque tube itself, so make sure you put that back in before you lift it all the way up. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get to it. Right, let's try and lift this thing up. Alright, so I had my buddy Chris come over with another jack to kind of stabilize the rear cradle. This definitely would have probably fallen on me if he didn't come over, because I had the one jack in the middle and it was like kind of teetering, and I'm like, hell no. So we just kind of raised all 3 jacks up slowly, and we got those 4 posts kind of like barely screwed in, and once they were all in, it was super easy after that. There's a little alignment dowel on this side that you just kind of line up first, and then you're good to go. But I just need to put the other side of the suspension back on, and it really wasn't too bad. And then throw the shifter back in too, but that's pretty easy. The other thing to note is the muffler setup. You definitely want to kind of like put that over the transaxle while you're putting this all up, because it's near impossible to feed these mufflers through the way that the bends are. It's kind of dumb, so keep an eye out for that. But I think that's gonna do it for today's video. I know you guys like the removal, so I figured I'd show you guys the install again. Make sure I wasn't BSing anybody and just only know how to take shit apart and not put it back together. So
yeah, how long people have been waiting to see the parts actually come back.
Yeah, it's nice to finally be putting this thing back together. This is the first time I started installing stuff and not taking it apart on the car, so making progress. I think we're beyond the halfway point. So the motor should be coming back hopefully like next week, I would say, and then gonna throw that in next. Stay tuned, guys. Thanks.